Hi, Cristy.
Hi, Patrick. How-
It is so nice to see you, and I'm really excited to be here talking with you about Saturn and Pisces. It's
Me
been a
too.
long time coming, this conversation. I'd say almost 3 years as we're about to wrap it up. And for those of you who don't yet know us, my name is Patrick Erie. I am an intuitive astrologer and celestial channel, and this is my wonderful colleague, Cristy de la Cruz.
Hello, and if you do not know me yet, I'm Cristy de la Cruz, and I am an astrologer, a podcaster, an author, and those are my primary things right now.
It's nice to have primary things, isn't
Yes.
it?
Yeah.
So let's talk about Saturn and Pisces. So Saturn and Pisces has been with us for just about 3 years. It's going to exit into the sign of Aries on February 13th, and it won't be back until 2053.
Yeah.
My gosh. So this is really a monumental shift. We're not going to get to experience this energy collectively in the same way for quite some time. And especially with Saturn, which to me so encourages us to look at the wisdom of our own life experience. While it would be easy to jump in to talk about what Saturn and Aries will be like and this next experience, and I look forward to that too. We
Mhm.
also wanted to come together to really talk about what it has been like for us, what we have learned, what our curriculum has been, what our experiences have been, what we have created, how we have expanded, how we have grown. That's such a wonderful Saturnian imprint and feeling to it. So I'm really excited to be here with you and just get a chance to recap and really to ground that
Yeah.
wisdom.
Yeah. I love that, Patrick. I think it's so important because the mind can get very wrapped up in kind of definitions and archetypal everything. But really, the way astrology comes together for me, at least, is like, what is my experience? Like, what has my actual lived experience been since March 2023? And what is Saturn teaching me as it's in Pisces? And I happen to be Pisces rising, which I found out like I don't know, a little over a year ago, and a lot of stuff clicked into place for me. I was just like, oh yeah, this makes so much sense. I think you might have suspected it though, Patrick, back when you were inviting me to talk about Saturn and Pisces, and I was like, I don't know if I want to talk about Saturn and Pisces. Well, Saturn doesn't give us an option sometimes. These lessons appear and then we work through them and most of the time, at least for me, I find that like, okay, the lesson had something to teach me and now I know what it is, but I don't always know when I start, right? It's like it's being delivered over time. And that's one thing I appreciate about Saturn is, it's usually this like 2.5 year más o menos like time. So you can really lean into whatever lessons it is. It doesn't, it's not a quick transit. It's letting you really have those experiences that tell you, hey, maybe I need to work on setting some boundaries with some family members or with some friends um and it'll give you those lessons over time. And in Pisces, I feel like Saturn is a little more gentle. It's a little more uh not quite as in your face and more kind of just redirecting you gently when you're maybe off course a little bit. How has that been for you?
Yeah, I've had that feeling too. Certainly, Saturn does bring that awareness of well, two things. I'm thinking about the blessings of slow change that Saturn
Mhm.
brings to us. And I'm also thinking about that theme of boundaries that you mentioned, which is such a beautiful Saturnian word. And the way that we would experience boundaries in Pisces is very different from the ways that we would experience boundaries in Capricorn or Aquarius, which would be
Yeah.
two signs that would be associated very clearly with Saturn as a traditional ruler, or as I like to think of it, a local representative. There's some match between those signs and the energy of those signs and the expression of Saturn. So Saturn in Pisces and the Jupiter ruled sign is naturally going to have a different feeling to it. And you think about setting a boundary in Capricorn, you think about Earth, it's an Earth sign. So setting a boundary on land is very different from setting a boundary in water.
Yeah.
And specifically with Pisces, setting a boundary in the ocean, in the infinite sea, in this quantum field that we all share.
Yeah.
So Saturn in Pisces has raised some really interesting themes for me around emotional boundaries and connectivity, and particularly around compassion. I
Mm,
remember that being a very active theme as soon as Saturn entered into Pisces. And now, having lived these 3 years, I feel so differently about it. It's
mm,
rather than feeling like I need to set boundaries to keep things out, it feels like to me, compassion is the boundary.
mm.
That when I'm able to engage with the world from this field of compassion, if I'm able to look at somebody and to think, gosh, what would it be like to be in their shoes and how can I see them more tenderly and with more love? I don't really need to have a boundary in place. I don't need to push that person away. I don't need to have them removed from my space to feel safe with them because I'm experiencing a heartfelt connection. I'm looking at them through my own tender eyes.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
interesting to me that need for an emotional boundary, which can certainly be present,
Yeah.
that it melts when
Mm.
we bring in the compassion. And compassion is also, much like anything, it's a practice. I've been doing a lot of Buddhist meditation recently and sending compassion, love to first to people who are closest to me, then out to a further circle of friends, out to my acquaintances, and then out into people who I'm experiencing conflict or difficulty with.
Yeah.
And that's such a beautiful practice. And the more that I do that, the easier it is to open my heart. And the more that I move through the world naturally from this place of compassion, which isn't a distancing energy.
Yeah. 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 Oh, I just love how you're describing it, Patrick, because I think I've experienced something similar too. And I was contrasting this morning as I was thinking about Saturn and Capricorn versus Saturn and Pisces. And, Capricorn would be like, building the brick wall, right? Where in Pisces, I really see it more as like this semi-permeable membrane. Like we all have cells in our bodies and they let in nutrients and they release waste and they have this beautiful dance that they do all the time without our awareness, without our direction, that just lets in what we need and lets out what we don't need. And what you're saying to me is this like very heartfelt expression of, the compassion piece, which is really taking in maybe what someone's experiencing and understanding. I mean, it's kind of filtered through our experience, but it's also that, compassion for a person. It doesn't mean you're taking on their suffering. It doesn't mean you're, taking on what it is that's not yours, but it gives you that maybe feeling that oh, I understand. I can sense what this person is going through, and and that gives me just a tenderness in the way that I treat them or the way that I approach them, um, and it can be very subtle, but it's really a much I think it's like a friendlier way to feel those boundaries um, because it's not static either. It's kind of flowing and a little bit more permeable in the sense that, like, yeah, you're not shutting yourself off to the world, which really isn't that helpful, actually. When we think about it, we are engaged in the world, we are part of the world, but how do we do that compassion piece without, kind of being swept away with someone else's emotion? It's quite an art.
It is. It's an art and it's a practice. And yeah, certainly, I think you're right. When we shut off the world, we are part of the world. The world is part of us. We're shutting off ourselves in some way. And
Mhm.
that can feel painful and distancing. I know in relationships where I've experienced conflict and I have felt unsafe and I've needed to remove myself, it pains me to be away from someone I love, even if I'm in a
Yeah,
situation of conflict with them. That doesn't feel good.
yeah,
It can be necessary to have those boundaries, but it's not where my heart wants to be.
Mhm.
So there is that respectful art of looking at someone, saying, acknowledging, I see that you are suffering here. I don't wish for you to suffer. I
Yeah,
love you. And I think there's also something to be said, and I see that there is value in your suffering. I see there is value in what you are experiencing. I trust you to create an experience that gives you whatever it is that you need to have in this moment.
Mm.
And I know that you didn't consciously choose for things to feel this difficult. I
Yeah,
also know and trust in our universe that there is something here for you. And being able to hold space simultaneously for, I see that you are suffering. I don't wish this for you. And also, I allow it. I allow
Mhm.
for you to be in this state of suffering because I trust that it's offering you something. And that also to me has that wonderful feeling of Saturn, of knowing this the bigger picture, the
Yeah.
long-term gains that you get from these experiences that we can label as difficult or painful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it's absolutely true. And it it is one of those things, like I know that in my own experience, I have, well, and I don't love the word codependent either, Patrick. I've been trying to figure out, are there other words to express that? Because really what I see as, for those of us who may be very empathetic, very sensitive individuals, like that is quite a gift. And sometimes that can make it a little harder for us to know when like we've overgiven or we're completely depleted and we don't really even see it because we're seeing some suffering, we're wanting to alleviate that suffering. And like you said, sometimes we have to recognize when it's like, okay, that person needs to go through that experience. I can't take that suffering away. In the times when I've suffered, I think suffering is a way to wake yourself up in a way. Like when you're suffering, there's something there for you, and it's like a big wake up call. And often when I have seen it even in myself, it's like, oh, I'm telling myself a story that's causing pain that's completely unnecessary. I'm telling myself, oh, this person doesn't love me, or if they loved me more, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, actually, when I actually lean into what is actually real and the lived experience of what we're going through. Oh, this person said this thing. I'm making it mean this whole other set of things. And so I don't always need to suffer, but it's that little alarm clock that goes, "Oh, like what painful story are you telling that really isn't serving anyone?" And when you're seeing it more like that, it's like, okay, I don't really need to tell that story. And so there's like a reframing you could do almost of, what am I meant to observe about this? What is this bringing up for me? What little wounding might I be healing right now that is just, it might feel very subtle, but it's important to get those little wake up calls.
It is, and I love what you said. It gives me this feeling of grounding possibility into emotional reality. That there are
Mm,
all of these stories that you could make up, and those stories are coming from something that sits within your emotional body.
mhm.
Part of you that felt excluded or that felt rejected in some way, and is making up these stories to attach a reality to.
Mhm.
And especially with Pisces, I think about infinite possibilities and I think about imagination. And we can certainly imagine ways that people have done us wrong or that they have hurt us.
Yeah.
So when we use the blessings of Saturn and we really ground ourselves in what is emotionally present for us, then it begins to open. And
Yeah.
I've been doing a lot of work myself around reframing this idea of negative emotions or dense emotions, or I recently heard them referred to as non-beneficial emotions. And I thought, well, that doesn't square with my current understanding of emotions, which is that every emotion would be beneficial because it would be a signal. It's a wake-up call. It's letting us know
Yeah.
something. It's a resonance. So I don't want to label anything as negative or dense in a dismissive way or non-beneficial. So I've ended up now referring to these emotions as protective emotions.
Oh.
And my practice is now, even rather than releasing
Mm.
or letting go of, because again, how would you feel if someone walked into the room and said, Cristy, we're going to let you go? You might
Mm.
not feel great about it. So I'm thinking about
Mm.
approaching my emotions. I don't want to go in with that lens. So I've
Mm.
really been thinking about opening protective emotions
Mm.
and what it's like to just allow my protective emotions to open so that I can listen to them and be with them.
Mm.
Interestingly, with Saturn and Pisces, I've been specifically doing this when I'm in the shower, just feeling that water rush on me and just asking the water to help me open my
Mm.
protective emotions. And I'm feeling these layers, I'm getting access to these softer layers of myself as a result of this. It's like this non-judgmental way to experience my own very real emotions.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's a beautiful way to put it, Patrick. Opening protective emotions. Yeah. Ooh, I like that. Yeah. And how fascinating that that kind of insight kind of appears when I always have insight in the shower.
I know.
I mean, I sometimes am like, okay, if I'm stuck in some way, it's like taking a shower or a bath or something is like gonna open up something that I can't always do, in a conscious way, but somehow it's sort of accessing some different flow of energy, which is so cool because why not in Pisces? It's that ocean of support.
It
Yeah.
is, and I'm so aware thinking about this about the power of water that we are
Mhm.
more and more aware of in our society. Wonderful researchers like Dr. Emoto and Veda Austin who talk about the structure of water, and that's such a Saturn and Pisces phenomenon, the
Mm,
structure of water,
yeah.
knowing that it's not just water molecules all kind of hanging out in a glass, that they have an order, they have a structure to them, and that's
Mhm.
also our bodies, which are mostly made of water. I think it's what 80% by weight or 99% by molecule count water. So the way that we are structuring the water within us, it
Yeah.
has an incredible impact on our experience. And science is more and more showing us that water structures itself and that our water, our within our bodies is structuring itself around our thoughts and around our feelings, our
Mhm.
internal reality. So it's fascinating to me that we're now getting more scientific evidence that's showing that these internal structures that we have are then what are reflected outwards in
Yeah.
our experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And it's also fascinating to me too how because water has a flow and water, is kind of constantly in motion, well, all molecules are really, some are more visible. Um, but reshaping, that process of reshaping a belief, for example, sometimes we see that as like, oh, that's a difficult thing because I have this old habitual belief. But I think what water kind of shows us too is like that can be almost instantaneous. Like we can wash away an old belief by, I mean, it takes some conscious practice for sure. I'm not saying it's always going to be instantaneous, but it's like, oh, every time, this pattern happens, okay, how can I just acknowledge it's there and then just bring some compassion to myself for having that thought. It's perfectly understandable why I had that thought. And I'm going to choose to move to something else. It's kind of like when you taught me the I'm leaving or this is leaving, it's leaving,
Oh,
you know,
yes, one of my
kind of
favorite
like
tools.
yes, wash your hands, maybe there's some dirty stuff on there and you wash your hands with soap and it's leaving. It's going down the drain. I don't need it anymore. And so, in that same way, if we might see a belief that isn't totally serving us or really the collective, it's time to wash that belief away. And water has the amazing ability to do that for so many substances. And so, um, to me, it makes it feel like that loosening of something old doesn't have to take forever. It can be somewhat instantaneous, and when we put our intention there.
Absolutely. And when we, as you say, allow for that softness, when we
Yeah.
appreciate that that belief is there because it was serving us in some way,
Yeah.
it was wanting to protect us, it was
Yeah.
wanting to help us. And
Yeah.
rather than judging it and telling it that it has to leave, taking a moment to really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I know that you are there because I asked for you to be here and I invited for you to be here. And now I'm ready for things to be different. I'm ready to open up.
Yeah.
And if you think about water and you think about structured water, even in that case, it's not about I'm getting rid of any of the water molecules. It's just about we're just going to make a different painting. We're going to paint, we're
Mm.
going to put ourselves together differently. We were structured like this. Maybe
Yep.
we don't have to be structured like this anymore. Maybe we can be structured in a new way. There's still room and space for everyone. There's room and space for all of that energy to be there. It just doesn't have to be structured or formed in the same way that we were expecting it to be.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of freedom in that. I really love that image and that way of thinking about it. That's cool.
Yeah, there's generosity. And I'm curious too for you, time, since
Mhm.
Saturn is associated with time as a timekeeper or a ruler of time,
Mhm.
and how you have been relating to time and how you're relating to time differently now from how you were relating to time when Saturn first entered Pisces.
Yeah, well, it very much correlates, interestingly enough, Patrick, with some of our first discussions on astrology, because I think you did a reading for me a few months before that. But then I don't know, we had a podcast conversation and I was like, there's something about astrology that just really resonates with me. And um, I think in this Saturn and Pisces time for me, it's been a little bit of a process of not being so tied to like clock time or calendar time, but really seeing the bigger arcs of time. And maybe that's sort of a fluidity about like I think in the past, well, I always kind of felt like I'm in a rush, like I'm late for something, I've got to get there. And this generosity of time has sort of been like, oh, but you don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to have all the details done. Like time is more spiralic and if you're not picking up the lesson this time, you're gonna get it again. Like in a gentle way, not like, sorry, Cristy, it's not so much a disciplinarian kind of Saturn as it's all right. Like take your time. It's gonna come to you again. And so it's felt very freeing for me in that way of like there's really no rush. And as someone who is going to be 52 this year, I always think like, you know, societal structures around, you should be able to do these things by this time are kind of like all made up. So they're, and that Pisces sensibility maybe says, yeah, it was all made up. And my cat Willie wants to
Oh my
participate in the
gosh.
discussion too.
Hey, kitty.
And for him, time is all about like the quality of naps. I mean, am I,
Uh-huh.
am I napping in the sunshine or if I am I napping in the closet where Christy keeps her clothes and it's very warm? Um, but yeah, time is taken on a new property, and I think it's a much more um, it can be more playful, perhaps, for me. And so I'm really grateful for that because um, yeah, I would say that it hasn't always been easy for me to do that. How
I
about
hear
you?
you. And well, you just showed me too a time timer, which was a
Yes.
new, a
Yeah.
new kind of concept or
Yeah.
awareness for me. Tell me about the time timer.
Yes, the
Uh,
time timer is a way of physically representing time on a clock. And so as you see the time until, say, you have to go to an appointment and you see the time getting smaller, you just realize, okay, it's almost time for the event. It's sort of a gentle reminder, and I can have an alarm on this or not. Um, and it's a way of visualizing time that I think is just so brilliant that, some of us do struggle with like clocks, clocks, because, and maybe this is it too, Patrick, like the energy we have sometimes, like when you're hyper focused on something, um, time just, time just flows out. Like when I'm writing or when I'm podcasting, like I can miss lunch and not realize that I forgot to eat, like, so time doesn't feel the same way, I think, to me as like everybody. And so being able to visualize it in a different way is like, oh gosh, it's brilliant. So I'm trying.
Yeah, it sure seems that way. I keep thinking that would be such a wonderful thing for children, for my children. Because again, like clock time, it's not like clock time is inherent to our
No.
experience as humans. It's something that we have learned to work with and we continue to learn to work with. And children are taught how to tell time and
Yeah.
about minutes and hours and seconds. It's not the same as walking, where you're gonna walk, you're learning how to walk. This is part of your development. This is something that we are culturally introducing.
Yeah.
So it's really interesting that you have a tool that's looking at time with a clock, but in a very different way.
Yeah.
And I love that and appreciate it. And I've really been noticing too. I feel this a lot around eclipses, but I've been noticing it more and more with everyday things.
Yeah.
The tail of things before they happen.
Oh,
I
yes.
guess in quantum physics we talk about retrocausality, or kind of what you're doing
Oh,
now
yeah.
affects what the past is, and noticing. And we might all have experiences like this in our lives where something comes up to do and you realize that you have everything that you need to put
Yeah.
that together. This just happened for me with something I commissioned from a friend. And he realized, he was like, I happen to have an extra grounding cord. I happen to have this crystal. I happen to have this and this and this. He just happened to have all of these things in place.
Oh,
And he was even wondering why he had them in
shocking.
place. It was
Oh,
as though he knew that I was going to order this before I knew I was going to. We both knew
wow.
that this was
Cool.
going to happen.
Mm.
which I just find continually amazing. Or sometimes we have that experience where, we aren't sure why our I get this, my calendar clears and I'm like, why is my calendar clearing for a week? And then something happens that first day and I'm like, oh wait, this is why. Like either I get
What I
sick
need.
or, there's an accident or there's like a field trip or there's something needs my attention. So my
Mhm.
calendar has been cleared before I knew why it was being
Yeah.
cleared for an event that hasn't yet happened. So
Yeah.
I just find this fascinating. We talk about divine timing, and one of the aspects of divine timing is that you are responding to events. Your schedule, your calendar, your time frame, timeline is responding to events before they've even happened,
Yeah.
which is awesome. So I'm really appreciating this wider awareness of time.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that, Patrick. And it really reflects maybe that sort of sense of flexibility with those boundaries, right? It's like those things can move around, and when we realize and trust that sense of divine timing, then it doesn't have to be like a problem. It's just like, oh, interesting. Something opened up on my calendar. Okay. Oh, and now I got a call from a friend to go for a walk. Like I couldn't have done that had I had this appointment. I mean, it is really fun how those synchronicities kind of come about too. And I do think like there's a playfulness just about astrology in general that I'm always like delighted by. I will maybe track things that are happening and then I'll go back and look at a transit and be like, oh my gosh, Jupiter was just trining my Jupiter. And then I got this big chunk of money I wasn't expecting to get. And it was like, that's fun. I mean, like, why not? So, I mean, in that sense of Saturn being the timekeeper or having a bigger appreciation of life, like even those kinds of things, like to be fluid and flexible with those rather than, like I must follow some kind of transit thing. Like that doesn't really work anyway. So, yeah, we don't have to impose the timeline. We can just sort of live with the timeline and live with the flexibility of it.
Yeah,
So,
well, and that would certainly be Saturn and Pisces, right?
yeah.
Like timing is divine, timing
Hmm.
is fluid, timing is flexible.
Yeah.
And the way that you structure it or hold it or allow for that to work is trust.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just trusting that there is a higher perspective, there is a bigger awareness, and
Yeah.
your time is being organized in the best way for you.
Yeah.
And that's a brilliant way to incorporate, I think, also the virtue of surrender, which is a wonderful Pisces virtue or practice of surrendering to something bigger,
Yeah.
surrendering to the wholeness of our universe, to be held by it. So I think there's something really gorgeous about that too.
Yeah. That's really true. And the other piece that just comes up to me because here I am in Minnesota and we just got a bunch of snow yesterday is when you think of the structure of water when it's frozen, um, I mean, that could be a Saturn and Pisces thing too, in that Um, I mean, it's beautiful. Like the crystalline structure of water, when you know, you're just seeing like everything being covered, almost like it's just like this clean, um, shiny, I'm just looking outside and it's like there's something very beautiful about it. So the fact that water can be structured in so many different ways and sometimes that can be just a really dynamic piece that we don't always appreciate about how Saturn can lend us that structure in different ways. So
I
yeah.
love that. It's structure offering us serenity.
Mhm. Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
it's perfect.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for agreeing to come and talk with me about Saturn and Pisces. It has been an absolute treat, and it's been so nice to move through these past few years with you. I feel really grateful for you, for our connection, for all that I have learned.
Oh, likewise, Patrick. I really love our conversations. So thank you again for scheduling this and for offering a chance to talk about one of our favorite subjects.
Well, huge love to you, and I'll see you soon.
All right. See you soon.